Arenas,
Here.
Mahan,
Here.
Peralez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. And before we get into our items, I do want to remind the members of our committee and the members of our public to please follow our code of conduct at the meetings. This includes sticking to the specific agenda items and addressing the full body of the committee. And public speakers should not engage in conversation with the chair or the council members and staff. And please refrain from any abusive language, and repeated failure to comply with the code of conduct of the meeting may result in removal from the meeting. Okay, we'll go to our work plan first. I see no items being recommended by staff. Any items recommended for change from committee members? And if not, then we can skip that and we'll go down to the consent calendar. Okay, we'll go down to consent. If I can get a motion to approve consent.
Yeah, I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Can we get or before, sorry, excuse me, before the vote, we can go to members of the public first. And as a reminder, this is on our consent agenda.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for seeing my hand. Just a quick thought to thank you for our budget items and budget review process for this year. Good luck how we can be talking about the importance of 2023 to make clear what we can expect in 2023 and into 2024 and 25. Thanks a lot for this item.
Thank you. I think that concludes our members of the public. Now we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Arenas,
Yes.
Mahan,
Aye.
Peralez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This takes us down to our main agenda, and we have item D1. This is our City of San Jose Disaster Resiliency Annual Report. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Peralez, committee members, city leadership, and others here today. I'm Ray Reardon, the Director of the City Manager's Office of Emergency Management. And today I'm joined with Nancy Taw, the OEM Resilience Coordinator in our office. Today we're here to present the annual report on the city's disaster resiliency. With the experiences of COVID over the last 2 years, there have been many accomplishments in the city's ability to respond to disasters and support the community's resilience. While OEM is presenting, the report is the result of nearly every department in the city. It takes a team to respond to emergencies and a team to ensure that the city and the community's ability to recover quickly is there after a disaster. We have representatives from the departments available for questions if they arise following the presentation. Next slide, Nancy. The report, as presented, captures how the city promoted disaster resilience by investing in our most vulnerable, promoting inclusion, supporting businesses, and promoting public health. By answering the question, what resources and support did the city provide, we can address the broader question of how the city created more resilient individuals, communities, and businesses. The report also captures how the city promoted workplace safety and invested in infrastructure improvements and developments and building resiliency within our own organization. I'll turn it over now to Nancy, our Resilience Coordinator.
Thank you, Director Reardon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Committee Chair, Committee Vice Chair, committee members, staff, and others in attendance. My name is Nancy Taw, and I serve as the Resilience Coordinator out of the City Manager's Office of Emergency Management. The Disaster Resiliency Annual Report is organized around the following 5 resilience themes: serving and investing in our most vulnerable, promoting inclusion, supporting businesses, promoting public health and workplace safety, and infrastructure improvements and developments. These themes are in no particular order of importance. Over the next few slides, we will look at the some of the accomplishments that have been made from the past 12 months around these 5 themes. While the report proves to be a more comprehensive list, we wanted to highlight a few accomplishments in each of the resilience theme categories. And I do want to point out that resilience has and will continue to be a multi-department effort. And hopefully you'll be able to see that in the variety of accomplishments that we have highlighted and listed. So the first resilience theme we wanted to note is serving and investing in our most vulnerable. We have the food distribution program, which is currently being run out of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services by the Food and Necessities team. This program continues to help feed city residents that are experiencing food instability. From last May until this past March, over 106 million meals were provided in collaboration with many partners. We have the Eviction help centers that's being spearheaded by the Housing Department. These centers were opened at City Hall and at Franklin McKinley School District office last August. And as of this past April, have assisted about 1,500 households at risk of eviction. And these centers have done so by providing services like helping with rental assistance applications and making direct referrals to legal aid services. We have hotspots, which the library has spearheaded. These hotspots have proven to be such a critical resource in our community. During this past fiscal year, thousands of these hotspots were distributed to students in need and made available to the public through the San Jose Public Library. The need is especially evident in the fact that hotspots were often 95 to 100% checked out. This is an effort to tackle that digital divide and move us toward digital equity. The next resilience theme we wanted to cover is promoting inclusion. And 2 of the accomplishments we want to highlight, one being the Resilience Core. The Office of Economic Development has worked extensively on this program, and the program's goal is to provide long-term paid employment opportunities. The program was launched last July, and as of this past April, has served 205 young adults. Over 85% of the participants in this program were from low resource census tracts, and about 93% identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Another big accomplishment has to do with the Digital Inclusion Fund, and this has been spearheaded by the library. This grant program has helped to provide San Jose residents with access to broadband internet. And it's so critical in the sense that this program is getting internet into people's homes, into the spaces that they feel the most comfortable, so that kids are able to do their homework and adults are able to find jobs on their own schedule, and families are able to research resources that are specific to the needs of their household. The first grant round resulted in 3,215 adoptions of broadband internet. Another 926 adoptions are set to be achieved by the end of June. And the third grant round strives to provide 2,150 adoptions of broadband internet. Again, tackling that really critical issue of digital equity. The next resilience theme is supporting businesses. In kind of answering that question that Ray posed earlier on of how do we provide resources and support to our communities, by providing resources and support to our businesses, we're helping them to become a little bit more resilient. So we have the special events that have taken a drastic decline since COVID due to COVID-related restrictions. From March of 2020 to June of 2021, there were only about 9 events that were allowed to take place, and that brought in about 640,000 attendees. To kind of put that into perspective, 640,000 attendees is about 1/3 of the number of attendees from the previous year. So COVID took quite the hit there. But we're starting to see some of those special event and attendee numbers return. The Office of Economic Development and their staff have facilitated 46 events from last June to this past March. And this brought in 1.6 million attendees back to these public outdoor spaces. The Office of Economic Development has done a lot of other great work too. They've conducted business walks starting in mid-2021. And this has been a really great opportunity to connect with the small business owners, to share information and resources and services that might assist these businesses, and ultimately to really listen to these business community concerns, all while done in a more personal one-on-one setting and done in the business staff's own language to allow for that greater accessibility. As of this past March, city staff within the Office of Economic Development have conducted business walks in each of the 10 council districts. And another thing to note from that particular office is the opening of the San Jose Career Center at a new location in East San Jose. The center strives to help both the job seeker as well as employers. The job seeker gains services like career advice and skills training, and the employer is gaining opportunities like job fairs where they can publicize openings within their company and meet with potential new hires. The next resilience theme is promoting public health and workplace safety. In terms of the community, when we provide resources and support to the community, we're helping them become a little bit more resilient in the world of public health and in investing in our city staff, in making sure that the workplace safety is there. We're helping our internal city organization to be a bit more resilient. So we wanted to discuss the vaccination task force and all the great work that they've been doing around COVID and COVID-related efforts. So as of last May, there have been over 100 vaccination events. In addition, the task force has partnered with over 40 organizations to deliver these COVID vaccinations, to provide education and outreach, and to offer additional wraparound services like food and housing support. Also, as of last May, the task force has worked with provider partners and supported the delivery of over 43,000 vaccinations. While all of this has been happening, the city has also provided 148 vaccine champions to support the county's effort. City of San Jose is not an island alone. We're here to be part of that greater community. So we're also helping our greater community. And another accomplishment we wanted to highlight comes out of the Emergency Public Information Office. Their recovery team has continued to provide valuable information related to COVID. This is involving vaccination and booster eligibility information, updated government guidelines, COVID variant information. From last July to this past April, the Emergency Public Information Office's recovery team, their social media platforms have received over 2 million impressions with over 67,000 engagements and 2,900 shares. And this is a great connection to point out. This recovery team is getting out some really good fact-based information to the community residents, and these residents are helping to amplify that message to their personal networks. And the final resilience theme we wanted to cover has to do with infrastructure improvements and development. As you can see from this slide, it is very much, as Director Reardon was saying earlier, it is a multi-department effort. The first big accomplishment that we're noting here has to do with planning, building, and code enforcement and their work around the soft story retrofit program. There was a big win where they were awarded the phase 1 grant for this program. And as this program progresses, it will help to preserve housing stock in the city, as well as to reduce the displacement of residents during earthquakes. We have another great accomplishment out of library with the community Wi-Fi networks. The 3 community Wi-Fi networks that continue operation are around James Lick, Overfelt, and Yerba Buena high schools. From just a 3-month period in January through March of this year, there were over 3 million sessions logged on across these 3 networks. So this again continues to support our city's efforts toward digital equity. And finally, we wanted to note the great work out of the Department of Transportation. Measure T and other investments in transportation infrastructure have reduced deferred maintenance infrastructure backlog. $31.5 million of this is linked to things like pavement maintenance, ADA ramp repairs and replacements, bridge preventive maintenance work. When we think about resilience, sometimes we think about it in terms of, oh, how can we be more resilient for that next big disaster? But we're also on a day-to-day basis helping ourselves be more resilient in our average commute to work, as we walk along our sidewalks, as we use these ADA ramps. So resilience is fairly comprehensive. So as we look toward the next 12 months, we continue to center around these same 5 resilience themes. The information provided here on these slides, as well as in the more comprehensive report, contains goals and projects and efforts that are subject to budget approval that is currently underway. And on this particular PowerPoint slide, the actions on that right column represent some of the future goals and projects from across multiple city departments. We have library working to distribute more devices like hotspots and Chromebooks to youth and the public. We have the Office of Economic Development initiating phase 2 of the Resilience Core program with efforts in multilingual recruitment and outreach. We have the Office of Economic Development also striving to revamp the current business owner space program, which helps businesses with issues like training, business formation, and obtaining loans. The Vaccination Task Force continues their good work of monitoring the COVID data and helping to determine if the city might want to scale up or scale down our efforts. And San Jose Community Energy, they're testing out a PG&E pilot program that strives to avoid rotating power outages during the summer. Participation is set to run from May to October of this year, and then they'll assess whether further participation in the program is appropriate. Again, these are just a few of the goals and projects that are going to be potentially taking place over the next 12 months. A more detailed list can be found in the report. I will now turn it back to the OEM Director, Ray Reardon, for some final comments.
Thank you, Nancy. The city really has made significant strides in resilience across multiple departments this past year and past 2 years, including providing millions of meals, offering discounted rates on renewable energy, launching the Resilience Core, opening the San Jose Career Center. There's many more activities that we've been able to accomplish. The city was also the recipient of the 2021 California Emergency Services Association Gold Award for its extensive efforts to combat COVID-19 and to integrate resources for the city's resiliency efforts. As the city comes out of the pandemic and takes time to learn the lessons from COVID-19 of the response and recovery efforts, we will need to continue preparing for the broader type and broader range of hazards that we can face in the future. Again, the work described here in the slides and in the report are the results of many departments, and we appreciate their hard work, challenges they faced, and the successes of their work. The newly updated city roadmap presented during the budget workshop, a newly developed enterprise priority, was established to focus on resiliency for the city. And that's the resilient and sustainable city infrastructure and emergency management priority. With that, we do request the follow-up on the recommendation for accepting the annual report in San Jose, City of San Jose's community resilience in responding to disasters.
All right, thank you very much for the report, Ray and Nancy, and we'll now go to first members of the public. Just as a reminder, this is on item D1, our City of San Jose Disaster Resiliency Annual Report.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. I've had a difficult time the past few days trying to go over the years of how I've gone through natural disaster preparedness at this time. I'm sorry about that. Thanks for your patience. What I initially thought was possibly in reading statistics of community energy that we could be bracing for a possible earthquake in 2023 has kind of gave way to, we may have been actually preparing for Putin and wartime in 2023, and the choices of renewable energy and fracked fuel gas that's going to be, just statistically speaking, it's going to be a major factor in our lives in 2023. Good luck how we can talk about these sort of issues. We prepared ourselves for good renewable energy practices in 2023 and beyond. and how we discern between the need of renewables versus fossil fuels. Good luck on that continued good work. That makes us unique in California, how we do that, and good luck on those continued good efforts. With that said, there was a lot of good work in the past year in tree planting issues. That tree planters, the tree planting issue, talked with California Office of Emergency Services a lot here in San Jose. And they prepared the groundwork for the next few years, what to really expect in San Jose, that I think it can be a wonderful resource on many levels if you want to dig further into what to really expect in the next few years with emergency services preparation in San Jose. And of course, thank you and all the great work that San Jose has been doing in including natural disaster preparedness with the ideas of racial equity and health and human services, to work on those terms and not just law enforcement, to work on those better terms. That's our good future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think that concludes our public commenters. We'll come back to members of the committee. Councilmember Mann.
Thank you, Chair, and Ray and Nancy, thanks for the very comprehensive overview. Really appreciate all the incredible work being done across the city to make our community more resilient and make sure that we're able to manage through and bounce back more quickly from various types of disasters. Really appreciate all the great work. I just had one question, which is I was going through the memo last night. I did not notice, and I apologize if I missed it, but I did not see a reference to CERT, and that's something that I certainly am very supportive of. In fact, my office worked last year to secure some additional funding to make sure that we get that emergency readiness training out to some of our underserved communities that are often missed due to language barriers or other reasons. And so, just wanted to know if that was intentional, if it fits, if having CERT in the report would be appropriate, and either way, if we could just get a quick update, since this is our annual report, on just kind of the status of expanding our network of trained community members who are ready to help us respond.
That's a great question. Thank you for the question, Dr. Mann, the Ray Reardon, OES Director. We have two reports that come. We have this resiliency report here in May, and we have our emergency management work plan in August. So we were holding out for the August because we're really getting our legs going right now. But we were able, it took us a while to figure out how to do the hybrid model of training. And we have had a course every month. And including up to 40 people. Sometimes the numbers varying from 25 to 40. And so that program continues. It's become quite strong. And in fact, this month, by the end of this month, we will try to deliver our Spanish module too, because we want to make sure we do them in multiple languages as well.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, well, that's great to hear. I'm so glad. I was worried that the omission or the absence of it in the report was not a good sign, but I'm glad to hear that things are moving along, and look forward to hearing more when you come back in the fall. Thanks, Ray. And that was all that I had with that. I will move acceptance of the report.
Second.
All right, thank you. We have motion and a second. Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that presentation. I wanted to focus specifically on the soft story issues. I think I have the largest number of soft story buildings in the city. So obviously, if an earthquake or some other type of disaster happens, I'm going to have a significant number of displaced residents. So can you give me a little bit more detail about the grant, timelines, work plan, what we're doing to move forward to identify and address that issue?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. That's a great question. We received the phase 1 grant monies in September. We just put out a contract to get of an RFP, put out the RFP, not the contract, put out the RFP this month, and we're getting bids in for the major work. And that major work includes going out, doing an inventory, providing information, and validating the number of facilities that are soft stories, the types of soft stories, establishing a policy that we will bring to council for approval, and how do we carry out the soft story program. That program the work is due by March of next year of that portion of it. After that's completed, then we're eligible for the second phase, which is the actual implementation of the product. So working with the landlords, making sure they're aware of the grant opportunities that come that way so that we can implement the program. And having lived on Lee Avenue, I know it's close to your area in a soft story building myself. When I got out of college, I know what those buildings will feel like to move when the earthquake happens.
Just a bit of color commentary onto that. The general direction that we're following is we will likely be moving toward recommending some sort of mandatory ordinance that's probably has a phase-in period of time, and that will specifically be looking at ways to mitigate impacts to low-income rental properties, and also working with, in addition to grant funding, working and helping to think through with financial institutions what are mechanisms that we can use, that private property owners can use to finance that and smooth out those costs over a longer period. The good news is these types of retrofits are relatively low cost and have a high level of effectiveness once they're put in. So now that we've finally gotten grant approval, we finally worked out all the details with FEMA on how to do the RFP in a grant eligible way, we should be moving at a much faster clip from now on. That grant was delayed for years, and then the delay between September and now was largely due to us going back and forth figuring out how to put the RFP out in a way that met FEMA's requirements. So Lisa Joyner in Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement is leading this work along with Ray's support from the team.
Thank you, Kip. That was helpful. And then Ray, you're going to come back in the fall, if my understanding is correct, with the plan to address any major disaster like our earthquake.
Yeah, that will be our report on what's our work plan over the next year in emergency management as a whole to continue to address all the other hazards we face. Correct.
Great, that's great to hear, because you guys did a lot of good work, and then obviously COVID happened and we kind of got set back a little bit. So I'm kind of back to where I was when I started out by running down the middle of the street yelling disaster, disaster, and then rolling up in the fetal position and yelling for my mother. So I'm back there. So I want to get trained and educated on how we can respond to these disasters.
It sounds good. We look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take note, Kip, that's color commentary. So appreciate the question as well from Councilmember Mahan. I similarly used the search function to see if I really had missed cert in the report. So thank you for that answer, Ray. I was interested just on what that looks like, and so appreciate that will be in your next report. There's a ton of work though that you and your office, and as you highlight, other departments have done, and we've really come a long way from the 2017 floods. And I think under your stewardship and your team and the collective support from our city manager's office and direction from the council, funding, all, you name it, everything sort of came together, and we were much better positioned to navigate, this unforeseen pandemic. And then through the pandemic, obviously, we've even been able to better prepare ourselves to continue to navigate through the last 2 years. But I think to be better prepared for the unknown, for what's to come next. And we know there is the inevitable emergency that is going to come. And I think we want to continue to ensure we are prepared for that. And unfortunately, one of the best ways is to actually, live through an emergency. And we don't want that to be, to happen. And so we need to continue to invest and be prepared. But I appreciate the report and the robust work that you have helped lead on here for our city. And I have no other questions. And so with that, if we can get a motion to accept the report.
We
we did.
Yeah, we did. Yep, I'm sorry. We have that. So now we'll do a roll call vote. Thank you.
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Peralez,
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see here. Now we'll go down to item D2. This is our sexual assault forensic exam or SAFE coordination report.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor Jones, Assistant City Manager Wilcox, Chair Perales, Councilmember Mahan, and last but not least, our strongest advocate for gender-based violence survivors, Councilmember Arenas. Thank you for your support. I also want to thank Peter Hamilton for his continued support throughout the PISFIS process. I'm Lieutenant Ken Tran. I recently took over Lieutenant Jimenez's position as the Sexual Assault Unit Commander. And if I could take a quick moment to recognize him for the tremendous job that he has done during his tenure in forging a collaborative working relationship with our partner agencies like the YWCA Silicon Valley, Pediatric Safe Team, and the DA's office to connect survivors with services. I intend to continue his efforts and bring the committee's work plans and visions relating to sexual assault survivors to fruition. Today, the Sexual Assault Investigations Unit is presenting a report on the coordination of safe exam procedures of the County of Santa Clara. We will provide some historical background, explain the SAFE process, gaps we identified, and our recommendations. Accompanying me today are my co-facilitators, Deputy Chief Al Washburn and Captain Jason Dwyer from our Bureau of Investigations, and Angeli Montesa, who is our crime intelligence analyst. So without further ado, I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Angeli Montesa.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the City Council members of PISFIS for having me here today. My name is Angeli Montesa, Crime and Intelligence Analyst for the San Jose Police Department's Sexual Assault Investigations Unit. Today, we'll be presenting on item D2 regarding the Sexual Assault Forensic Exam Coordination Report. The following items will be discussed in today's presentation. We will review the background and historical context surrounding sexual assault forensic exams, otherwise known as SAFE exams, in respect to non-investigative reports for the purpose of this report. Delineate the distinction between SAFE versus the term SART. Re-review the findings from the department's audit of NIRs and recommendations based on those findings. Then we will also clarify the law surrounding mandated reporting, the protocol surrounding notification and access to children 12 to 17 years old, the labeling of kits, the surrendering of kits to the department, reimbursement, and we will end with an update regarding coordination with the county. Beginning with the background and historical context of SAFEs in respect to NIRs, we know that in June of 2016, the Santa Clara County Sexual Assault Protocol was developed. In October of 2020, a NIR subcommittee was formed to meet bi-weekly and to focus on the topic of non-investigative reports. At the same time, in October of 2020, the Sexual Assault Investigations Unit conducted an audit of non-investigative reports dating back to January 2016. The audit took approximately 6 months, with SAIU completing the audit in March of 2021. After the completion of the audit, SAIU had presented the findings and analysis of the NIR audit the next month in April 2021. Then 7 months later, in November of 2021, SAIU provided an update on the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, also referred to as Cal Oes, their process for reimbursing SAFE exams. Then in January of this year, the bi-weekly meetings of the NIR subcommittee concluded. The purpose of slide 5 is to clearly define the term SART versus SAFE. The term SART, formerly known as the Sexual Assault Response Team, refers to a community-based team that was established by the county in 2016. The team is comprised of sexual assault nurse examiners and other hospital personnel, victim advocates, law enforcement, and the district attorney's office. The team is responsible for coordinating the response to survivors of sexual assault. In contrast, a sexual assault forensic exam, otherwise referred to as a SAFE, is the provision of both medical care and the collection of evidence. Now, a survivor of sexual assault does have the option to complete a SAFE exam without filing a police report. This is referred to as a non-investigative report, also known as an NIR. For the purpose of this report, I will continue to refer to the non-investigative report as an NIR moving forward. Historically, the terms SART and SAFE have been used interchangeably. But for the purpose of this report and moving forward, I will be using SAFE exam when making any reference to the SAFE process to include the SAFE kit or the SAFE report, and the term SART will be used when only referencing the team. And it was the SART team committee who developed the Santa Clara County Sexual Assault Response Protocol. The purpose of the protocol is to, quote, to establish a common understanding and framework for the provision of services to survivors of sexual violence, enable greater coordination and collaboration between community partners, and respond to issues and trends with respect to sexual assault in the county, end quote. And the chart on slide 7 shows a very summarized workflow of the current SAFE protocol. Starting on the left side, the SAFE exam is technically comprised of 2 types: a medical only SAFE exam, which is for the purpose of providing medical treatment only and does not collect forensic evidence. Then a forensic SAFE exam, which is inclusive of the provision of medical care. The forensic SAFE also encompasses NIRs and is for the purpose of collecting evidence in conjunction with the provision of medical care. Now, the far right side of the workflow shows the types of SAFE report forms that are required for forensic and medical only SAFEs. These reports are referred to as 2-900 forms, and there are 5 types as it applies to survivors. The type of form to use is determined by the age of the survivor and whether the exam is acute or non-acute. And please note that the mandated 920 forms for mandated suspicious injury report may commonly be provided for both medical only SAFEs and forensic SAFEs. And see that the 924 form is specific for NIRs. Moving forward with the analysis surrounding NIRs. Beginning with the NIR audit, slide 9 re-reviews the summary of findings from the NIR audit conducted last year. First, the department found that the 920 mandatory report form, or the survivor's name, was not always provided when a SAFE kit was collected. In some cases, the 920 form or other related reports were not received in a timely manner by the department. Second, for children aged 12 to 17, the department found that it was not immediately notified and afforded access to all children who received NIRs. This is contrary to and a violation of the protocol set forth by the county. Third, the department found that NIR SAFE kits were inconsistent with NIR labeling and the identification of the survivor's name sealed in the kit. Paperwork in the kits were noted as unknown or anonymous for the survivor's name. And fourth, some of the NIR SAFE kits were not provided to the department in a timely manner. Several kits were not collected for weeks or months after the exam had taken place. And California law establishes reporting requirements for health practitioners when treating suspicious injuries or administering a sexual assault exam. And with regards to the 920 form, Penal Code Section 11160 requires that if any health practitioner within the scope of their employment provides medical services for a wound or physical injury inflicted as a result of assaultive or abusive conduct or by means of a firearm shall make a telephone report immediately or as soon as possible. They shall also prepare and submit a written report within 2 working days of receiving the information to a local law enforcement agency. This report must accompany a report of sexual assault in NIR scenarios. The Cal Oes 920 form is the means of submitting the written report. And with regards to 923 and 924 forms, Penal Code Section 13823.5C requires that every healthcare practitioner who conducts a medical examination of a sexual assault or a child sexual abuse victim for evidence of sexual assault or sexual abuse use a standard form to record findings. The Cal Oes 923 form is used for this purpose. And in the case of NIRs, the consent page from the Cal Oes 920 form is also used. Slide 11 provides an example of the Cal Oes 920 form, which at minimum requires the name of the survivor. But aside from the name of the survivor, we see here that there are 12 items of information that are required to be provided. And slide 12 provides an example of the first page out of 9 pages of the Cal Oes 923 form and the consent section of the 924 form. Slide 13 is reflective of an NIR report audit conducted last year as well. And from that audit, the department found that the 920 reports were not received in 22 of 59 cases. Of the reports received, 2 were not related to sexual assault, 3 were not San Jose jurisdiction, 24 were missing location information, and therefore jurisdiction could not be determined. And one of those reports marked the location as quote unquote home, and no other information for the residents was provided. Here, this slide reflects the analysis regarding the notification and access to children aged 12 to 17. Section 11166A of the California Penal Code provides that when a mandated reporter knows or reasonably suspects that a child has been the victim of child abuse or neglect, they shall make an initial report by telephone to the specified law enforcement agency immediately or as soon as practically possible. And during the audit, the department noted that 8 NIR kits were collected from juvenile survivors. The department also found that it was not provided immediate access to the juvenile survivors as required by the Penal Code. And please note here that 10 of the NIRs in the department's possession have not been identified as juveniles or adults. The department continues to work to bridge the gap surrounding the topic of 920 forms. And simultaneously, the department is also addressing the inaccurate labeling of safe kits. The department has found that the inaccurate labeling has created confusion during submission to the crime lab for analysis. And additionally, this presents a potential chain of custody issue in court if a survivor wishes to convert their NIR into a standard report, which ultimately gets investigated and potentially prosecuted. And after the labeling of NIR safe kits, the department found that many of the NIR safe kits were received several days and even months after the safe kits were collected. 4 kits were even received 100 days after the report was made. Penal Code 680 does not explicitly specify the amount of time the medical team had to get the safes to law enforcement, but the spirit of the law and local policy is that safes should be provided to law enforcement immediately. And pursuant to Penal Code 13823.95, law enforcement may seek reimbursement from Cal Oes to offset the cost of conducting medical evidentiary examinations for victims of sexual assault. And effective February 2022, Cal Oes has modified its reimbursement process to allow law enforcement agencies to submit for reimbursement within 1 year of the medical evidentiary exam. And this should allow sufficient time for the county to invoice the department and for the department to seek reimbursement from Cal Oes. The department is continuing to work with the county to ensure invoicing occurs in a timely manner. And as this relates to the coordinations of the county, SEIU personnel met with the Safe Nurse Manager to close gaps related to NIR issues. Although progress is made, not all gaps have been closed, and the following efforts have been undertaken by SEIU to resolve NIR issues. First, SEIU met with the SART committee and discussed the issues. Second, the unit conducted an internal audit of NIR cases. Then SEIU asked the SART committee to create an NIR subcommittee. The unit also met and briefed the VMC Safe Nurse Manager, and the unit consulted with the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office for clarification on laws related to sexual assault and received guidance. Sixth, SEIU also provided all relevant data to VMC Safe Nurse Manager. And seven, the unit has also ensured the engagement of the chain of command within the police department. Furthermore, SEIU members and the supervising deputy district attorney of the sexual assault team worked to convince the SART committee to test NIRs in this county. And previously, the county was not testing NIR safes. The non-testing of NIR safes is contrary to the law, which mandates testing of all safes, including NIRs. This is another example of SEIU's commitment to bettering local policy relating to sexual assault investigations. Now we will end our report with recommendations and next steps. The department suggests 5 recommendations. First, the department recommends that the required report or the survivor's name should be provided to the officer collecting the safe kit to ensure timely delivery of reports, and that all information in all Cal Oes forms be correctly filled out with no missing data, and that historical data missing from prior forms should be provided. This is inclusive of name, date of birth, and crime. Second, in the cases of children aged 12 to 17, law enforcement should be notified immediately before the commencement of an evidentiary examination. This is to facilitate the collection of evidence and witness statements and the identification of crime scenes. Third, safe kits should be marked with NIR. With consent, the survivor's name should be written on the safe kit to maintain the integrity of the chain of evidence. If a survivor does not consent, steps should be taken by the safe team to ensure the case number on the safe kit and the case number recorded by the police department are consistent. And fourth, NIR safe should be provided to the department the same day that the safe exam was provided. And lastly, we recommend that the city manager's office and the police department are meeting sometime in June or July of this year with the county and district attorney's office to close all gaps. That concludes the department's report on the sexual assault forensic exam coordination. Myself, Lieutenant Tran of SEIU, Captain Dwyer and Deputy Chief Washburn of the Bureau of Investigations are present to address questions. Thank you for your time, and now I hand it back over to council.
Thank you, Anjali. And we'll go over to members of the public first. Just a reminder, this is on item D2, the sexual assault forensic exam safe coordination report.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. I just wanted to thank you for this item and that quick reminder that you did some really nice work in the past 6 months. The entire Bay Area has over testing issues and the surveillance involved, and it needed to be rechecked. Something wasn't going well with it, and you made changes to the program. Thank you for that. Data collection and surveillance and civil rights and civil protections is an important combination to be considering in our future, and we're considering it. So thank you. Good luck on how you talk about this item. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. We'll come back to members of the committee. Don't see any hands up at the moment. I see a physical hand. Councilmember Arenas. Oh, Councilmember, you're still on mute.
Sorry. All right. Thank you so much. I was having a bit of trouble getting to my mouse. Thank you so much for the report. I really appreciate the progress that has been made by the NIR subcommittee. And I'm really grateful that there's this audit of the kits that happened between all the way back dating from 2016 to current. Is that correct?
I believe it is not to current. Councilmember Angeli, can you clarify? I think it was through March of 2021.
That is correct, March of 2021.
Oh, I see. Well, that's almost current, right? So that's 2016 to last year of 2021. That's so I was impressed. I didn't I thought maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, because I was surprised that it was only 59 NIRs. I thought there would be at least very casually as we talk in our joint meetings. At least I had the impression that there was a lot more NIRs in the system, but I'm glad to see that there isn't, because I want those. Of course, I want those folks prosecuted, and I want those survivors to have an opportunity to move forward in their case. So great work. Thank you so much for doing that. Is the I know what you said that in your report that it is concluded in terms of NIR subcommittee, but at the very end of this report, and you ended with this as well, was some of that coordination with the county and how some of these items are still not, completely checked off. So what is the vehicle to move forward with what isn't finished just yet?
I'm happy to jump in and then defer to the deputy chief, because I added that to the presentation. So Lee Wilcox, Assistant City Manager. I believe last month at the county's Children, Seniors, and Families Committee, this issue came up again. And while we think at a staff level we've closed some gaps, there appeared to be some gaps communicated. So I heard from committee members, and then this week was able to speak to the county exec's office. So I do want to make sure from a process standpoint, especially since we're across several different agencies, and I can just say the way agencies apply for Cal Oes reimbursement are very different, especially that the county is actually like a subsection of the state and is our operational area, so they apply much differently. And I want to make sure from a process standpoint and kind of handoff that we are all in alignment. So Deputy Chief Washburn and I will be meeting with the county DA's office, hopefully late next week, about some of these issues.
So you'll meet with the DA's office, and who else? What are the other players that you'll be meeting with?
Sure. From the county, I suspect it will be Mikel Marquez, their Chief Operating Officer, and John Mills, who oversees this area, and then Terry Harmon and James Shapiro from the District Attorney's Office, and Deputy Chief Washburn and I from the city.
Got it. Oh, okay. Wonderful. One of the things that I think really worked in this process, I mean, it's very evident because you came up with some of these gaps that I think sometimes because we don't have an opportunity to stop and look at exactly what's going on, I think there's a broad brush approach to saying, well, it's this department's issue, and we just leave it at that. So I'm glad that we looked into this a little bit more, and we looked at some of the, I think, very serious items that are outstanding in terms of the 920 forms, and then, well, especially the 924 or 923 forms, because those are for minors. And I don't know how the county can work around not doing this mandated reporting. Now, I know that there's kind of a nuanced approach to what's more important. A medical provider, somebody who does a forensic exam is going to say, well, I want that exam to happen first and foremost, rather than delay and have the interview done. They are collecting evidence in essence, right, as part of their forensic exam. What is that soft spot there? What is that, middle of the road? What can we agree to? Because will we have access to the children? Will we require to have access to the children? Is that the best practice before there is an evidentiary exam completed?
Hi, Deputy Chief Washburn with the Bureau of Investigations. As it relates to your question sounds specific around, the access to children in the investigation. And
right,
there's a number of reasons as to why it's important to engage law enforcement early in that process. And a couple of, not just the evidence collection, yes, that is important, but there's other things we need to look at too, which is the potential of evidence at a crime scene. It could be other siblings that may be subjected to similar abuse if it occurred in the home by a known person. We want to make sure that we are identifying critical witnesses, that we're able to implement a safety plan, and just participating in that investigation in general. I think the concern is not so much the timing around access to the children. The cases that were pointed out in this report is the fact that there was a lack of access, which is required by law. So law enforcement was not afforded an opportunity to conduct any of those steps in those specific cases.
Yeah, and it is a real shame. I think that there were some that I think out of the 22 that had no reports, 3 of those were children, right?
Yeah, and there were another 10 where it is unknown.
Right, whether it's unknown, yeah. I mean, egregious is the no report. 10 is you did the work, yet we still couldn't identify this child who deserves to have their exam completed. Anyways, okay, so where is the county in terms of standardizing their labeling and their forms? Did they say in that NIR subcommittee, is there an agreement that they will, I know that there's a whole year to get the exam to you, but that's Cal Oes establishing that. What did both of you, our 2 parties here agree on standardizing the kit and then the surrendering of the kit?
Well, I think the gap still exists. We continue to attend the Adult SARC committee meeting and express our concerns around those forms. And, strict compliance does not yet exist. The year with Cal Oes has to do with receiving an invoice for reimbursement.
An invoice, yeah.
One of the gaps. The gap that I think that we're talking about presently is, the NIRs and receiving those in a timely manner, coupled with the required forms. We attend the meetings, unlike some other, I won't talk about other law enforcement agencies. What I could do is speak to ourselves, and we do attend those meetings with regularity. We continue to voice our concerns. Our report and audit here today, is not current to date, but I can tell you that we do not have strict compliance around the completion of those forms, and continue to voice those concerns. Much like Assistant City Manager Wilcox said, we are now having these discussions at a chief and city manager level to ensure that, the efforts that we have been doing over the last year are being heard, at a county supervisor level as well. And so we can allow them to weigh into that conversation. So it's still a work in process. I think the report today is the data supporting our claims, if you will, around reporting, and the issues that we have, or the gap we have around data sharing. And to answer your original question, I think the county has stated that they intend to automate this. electronically, which would make it easier and more timely. But my understanding is that has been over a 2-year process, and we have no update on a program timeline as it relates to that recommendation.
So the automation would go to the kit labeling or the form, or which part would be automated?
I'd have to call Angela. Do you know if that is specific to the Cal Oes forms, AKA required reporting or mandated reporting? Can you answer council member's question?
Yes, so to my understanding, it's not to the forms. It was in reference to the invoicing, some sort of portal that would facilitate in regards to that topic. Now, as far as the Cal Oes forms, I am unsure of that answer.
Yeah. Here's where I was going with using the Cal Oes reimbursement. You know, they established that standard. And what I was looking for is what standards have we established? Now we figured out what the gaps are, what best practice are we agreeing to take on from here, you know, until forever. And so for me, it sounds like maybe this is also part of the discussions that need to be had at the joint meetings. I know that you'll all have a conversation with the county executive folks, as well as Terry Hartman and Shapiro, Gibbon Shapiro, and that might, I guess that maybe at that point you think that there will be a resolution. I guess I'm trying to figure out how can we be helpful? How can we help you get to the end of this? Because you're at the very, almost at the end of this, you know, I don't even know how to say it in football terms. I was going to try, but I'm not even going to do that. But so you're almost there. How do we get you over the finish line?
Yeah, I think this is a really important discussion that we're about to have at a county executive and city executive level, because there are, you know, today we focused on reimbursement and NARs/data reporting, which are 2 of the 3 major gaps. The other is authorization and you know, the discussion around that language. Not to bring that conversation up here, that's a different topic, but those are the 3 areas where we still have gaps. And you know, this is with the adult forensic exams. The pediatric team, we have collaboration and an agreement, and these issues do not exist. We're talking 12-year-olds to, you know, and above and beyond. So we are now at the point where we're bringing it to the chief and city manager level, and I think, you know, I'm confident that we'll get some, you know, clear direction and resolution through those discussions that begin next week.
Great. So I know that this particular report isn't going to answer the questions about the funding for the exams, right? That is one of the areas where it's still outstanding, and we can talk about it in just a little bit. I don't want to take away from the really good work that you have here, but I do want to point that out as you get together with those folks, and maybe just so we can have it as an item that still needs to get discussed, maybe at a joint meeting level. So one of the things that I wanted to move towards is, I don't know if at this level where you're all going to have this meeting, you're going to be able to decide the best practice in terms of who gets to that kiddo first, right? Does the police, you know, if they're receiving that child in their physically at the advocacy center or at BMC or wherever they're at, how would that work in terms of trauma and being trauma informed, and not, you know, making our children wait for very long. I still call them children because they're under 17, right? And even if they were above 17, these are survivors at whatever age. You know, this is a violation. And so I'd like to know from you, if you know at this point what your recommendation would be.
You know, it might be too early to tell. What I can tell you is this: we use the Child Advocacy Center, where all of the involved partners to support that survivor respond. And, you know, certainly we would never delay medical care to a survivor. And I think that while we're there with the advocates, the forensic interviewer, the medical staff, the district attorney's office, everybody is present. And the whole point of that center was to make it where we do not impede services to the child. I think the timeliness of the exam before an initial interview or disclosure probably is evaluated on a case-by-case basis. I think what we're talking about here today is that kind of more global.
The safety plan, you mean?
Well, it's access to the children. The law states that law enforcement should have immediate access. Now that maybe is being interpreted as access before medical staff. That necessarily the case. I think what we're trying to say is that the law states that law enforcement who conducts a criminal investigation should have access to a child, whereas we haven't seen that. As to whether or not in the minutia or the specific timeline of each and every child and case, it might be case specific. You know, we certainly, like I said, would not impede medical aid to a child because we're now going to the CAC, which is designed around in providing resources to the child and the children's family or the survivor's family without delay.
Right. Yeah. Now I get it. It's not an or. What you're hoping to achieve is just to be able to do your part, your job, and look and see if there's any evidence in the home, if there's any other children that are in danger. Those are the other items that this medical team will not be able to do. It's beyond their scope, and by law, that's what you need to do. So got it, loud and clear. Okay. And thank you so much for changing over the acronym. I really love it, and I'm grateful. I think that it relays what we want it to for survivors. So I know that the county has different entry points, and that's part of the problem, right? And part of it. I mean, it's a double-bladed sword here because that allows for more children to come into the system and to be seen, but it also there's just more entry points for us to kind of monitor, if you will, which I think is part of the issue here. Will you please consider, when you have these discussions, can you please ask them to help you identify or have them identify what are some of those entry points where I've heard. I know that there was a conversation before where one of the forensic examiners shared that there was a lot of 3-year-olds in their system that didn't match up with our reports. And so that just proves what you're showing here in terms of maybe they are not submitting those reports, right? And so I'm hoping that they can also do the same thing that we did and have this audit. And I don't know that, you know, their system is obviously compared to ours, but we managed to do it. I think that it's also appropriate to figure out from their entry points, where is it that the gap, you know, where is it that things are crumbling, where the protocols aren't being followed. I think that's a really important point for us in order for us to really address this issue, because it's not just the protocol in one place. It's that culture that has been cultivated over time and nobody's corrected it because people may think it's in the best interest of the child, but it's not what the law says. So I'm hoping you can make that point, DC Washburn, or whoever else is there. I think we also need to ask ourselves the same question in terms of our entry points and how are we dealing with survivors at the front lobby or at the Family Violence Center or at the, you know, obviously the Children's Advocacy Center is supposed to be a model, but, you know, things can also happen where we think we have it all together. Or any other, or, you know, in the field where there's a lot of police officers actually going to the entry point rather than coming to us. And so I love for us to take a look at, as part of a phase 2 of this analysis, is to take a look at what, I know that we're asking the county to do their part. And believe me, when you get back with what you know, with the conversation that you have, and I'd love for you to have it report back, and I'll have that as part of the motion. The other part is, I think we also need to do that ourselves and figure out where is it that we also are having some blind spots. Is our front lobby adhering to all the best practices that we have set for ourselves and for our survivors? And is one site better than the other? And if so, how do we balance that out? So I will make a motion to approve the report, and then to also ask for a report out of or an update of whatever results of this conversation or this future meeting, and a discussion about the points of entry for survivors within our system. So some more additional information at this point. I'm not going to ask for like a whole analysis or report. I just want us to be cognizant of our own the different entry points that our survivors come through, so that we are being just as diligent as we're going to ask another system to be.
And may I just try to seek clarification on that point? As the motion is presently, just as far as the entry points, just trying to look for some clarification on what exactly you are looking for. I mean, obviously, survivors come to us in many different forms. So whether it's referrals by an advocate because they went to an advocacy center first, or a walk-in to Valley Medical Center, or a hospital in general, or a call for service from home or school. They do come in a number of different ways, whereas a call for service is generated, or we're notified by hospital staff, and therefore a call for service is generated, and the officer responds to that location to initiate an investigation. Ultimately, the survivor will be transported to the Valley Medical Center, where the SART team is, to conduct the forensic exam. If they're a child, they go to the pediatric center. So that's, obviously that's where we conduct the exams. I know we recently did a policy change. It sounds like the intent maybe behind this motion is to ensure that we as a city and we as a department are looking constructively and critically at ourselves to see where we can make improvements. And I know we've reported previously about how we recommended a change in protocol before it said within 72 hours an exam occurs. We recommended that be expanded up to 10 days. I know you're familiar with that policy change. And even a 10-day plus, meaning if there are extenuating circumstances, we will go outside that 10-day period and authorize. Additionally, we have a recommendation that was approved by the chief of police, whereby we cannot reduce the priority of a pending call for service, because we want to ensure that we have a timely response to our survivors and they're not being delayed. So we are in a constant state of evaluation on where we can improve. And I think some of these things come out of that SART committee, where they bring to our attention what they consider to be some gaps, and we put action behind those gaps. But again, as it relates to points of entry,
I am talking about the calls for service, DC Washburn. You had it correct. I am just looking for that continuous improvement, but also assessment, right? Because we don't really have a baseline, and I think it's hard to determine, and maybe we take a look at a short period of time in terms of how did these calls for service, how did they end up? Did some of them go to the Children's Advocacy Center? Did any of them use the interview rooms that you have in the second floor? Did an advocate connect with them the first day? These are the kinds of protocols that I think make a difference between whether a survivor is going to continue on with the legal process, because if they feel supported and if we adhere to our best practices, then we have kind of optimal results.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see that. We can take this offline and we can, we can fine tune it a little bit. I think it's just, and I think you're already very much open to it, DC Washburn. So I don't know that it's anything outside of what I'm already saying that you're not already doing.
Yeah, maybe a further discussion offline. It sounds like I would need to clarify whether or not that information is stored and retrievable, whether it be in the reports. We could pull that through crime analysis, a hand query, 'cause some of the information that you stated, whether or not certain rooms are used, it's not something that can be extracted out of our database.
Right.
So we would have to look at some of the specifics of that and whether or not that would be feasible to report out on.
Right. Yeah. And that might be procedural, right? It might be something whether we actually, and here's where I really would love to get to, is where we have changed a culture. And if we recognize that we've had gaps in the way that we serve survivors, and you've made these changes. Now, the rules are here, but the practices are in every officer and detective and personnel, that is in a building. And have we created the change that we wanted with some of this operating procedures that we established? So that's what I'm ultimately looking for. And so we can take this conversation offline. I think we're both on the same page on this. So I'll just go ahead and move that motion, and then we can take that last piece offline.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Thank you for the presentation, the questions. I just have a couple. So where would you say, Deputy Chief, that the biggest contention lies, right? Obviously, we're getting the perspective here from the police department, from SEIU and the audit. And you've indicated some pretty concerning, I think, data there. And most concerning, I think, is that there's not complete resolution at this point on how are we going to shore up some of these what look like deficiencies. And so where is the contention there? Is there a perspective from the county officials here that they're adhering to everything correctly, and that this is a misinterpretation on our part? Where can you help kind of paint that picture for me?
Yes, we have three major gaps that I'll recap, and I stated them earlier, and it is hard to prioritize one over the other. They're equally challenging for various, or for their own reasons. One is the NIRs that we took a deep dive in on today, and the data sharing as it relates to that is required by law. And just the preservation of that evidence, right? The second one has been a topic of discussion, which is reimbursement with Cal Oes. The good news on that one is they changed their policy in February of this year to allow for a 1 calendar year to seek reimbursement. The point of contention as it relates to that is the county states that we should not be required to have an invoice to seek reimbursement. Whereas our research tells us, based on the information from our chief financial officer and a branch chief with Cal Oes, that an invoice is in fact required. It's hard to seek reimbursement for something if A, you don't know it's occurred, right? The circumstances of the NIRs, we didn't even know an exam occurred. And B, you don't know what you're going to be charged. It depends on what the nurses perform. Ultimately, is going to be what the invoice says. And it can vary from $800 to almost $3,000. So it's hard to seek reimbursement when you don't know that, the quantity and or even an exam has occurred. Now, with the calendar year, we hope to seek those invoices within that calendar year. And we have been able to ask retroactively for the information, or for reimbursement on some of the invoices we do have. I think it was $280,000 in a calendar year is what we spent on some of these exams. And so that's one topic of discussion where there's a difference of opinion. The last point is around authorization, and it's because it's the law and the Cal Oes manual, and is open to interpretation depending on who you ask. Our city attorney and the pediatric supervising DA with the district attorney's office says that authorization lies with law enforcement. And the adult team, it feels differently. And there's an attempt or effort to change the county protocol to remove the need for law enforcement authorization. So it's a complex issue, authorization, and that's one of the discussions we're going to be having with the county. It's just the interpretation of a safe exam, right? Is it forensic in nature, thereby authorized by law enforcement for the purposes of collecting evidence, whereby the city pays for that exam? Or is it not authorized by law enforcement and therefore subsequently a medical exam? And then who gets charged that bill? And there's a difference of opinion there, I believe. So it is a complex issue, in part because the law is not always clear, but we have done the research and believe that lies with law enforcement. And so that's the long answer to your very short question.
No, I appreciate that. I know last time we did speak on the reimbursement portion of it. I personally, I'm less concerned about the financial aspect, more concerned about things like what you've denoted in the report today about no reports, 22 individuals, the 2 juveniles, right? And that's where it brought some concern to me. And it sounds like that's more in line with this last portion that you mentioned on a difference of opinion. And so I think, it's incumbent upon us to nail this down. And I think that in circumstances like this, where if there is maybe just a firm difference of opinion, that's where you need a mediator, right? Or you need somebody to come in and mediate and to help us understand this, whether it's somebody at the state or right, to be able to say, no, this is exactly what it should be and how it should be done. So hopefully we can do that, and we can get on the same page sooner than later, and just be able to provide the service that, number one, we're legally obligated to, but two, I do just share some concerns with the fact that the other ramifications that can come about, especially with juvenile victims or survivors, and as you put in the report, what is often the case, these are somebody that is a family member or close to the family, and likely other children and around, right? And if we don't have this kind of information, and there's suspects or perpetrators out there, that's a problem, right? That's a problem, and I know within law enforcement, that's not something that we're willing to accept. That just say, hey, sorry, we're going to pass on having that info, and so I look forward to finding some resolution here sooner than later. Okay, Councilmember Arenas, did you have your hand back up, or is that from before? That's from before. Okay, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Arenas,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Mahan,
Aye.
Peralez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to open forum. And as a reminder, this is for any item that was not on today's agenda.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. Good look how the peer review program can be talked about more in San Jose. I know it's being incorporated in different ways to bring out all its different forms between yourselves and the Reimagine group. Good luck. A reminder that I think this can be a good, interesting summer of dialogue with things like the Reimagine Task Force that I think if they work within, their local community areas, I think something very interesting can be developing this summer that I'm hopeful about. And how we talk about the future of policing and community, and I guess public health and safety. So good luck in those efforts, what we can be doing this summer. I wanted to remind that with the events of Buffalo and in California this past weekend, you know, we're working on a really good list of human rights and civil rights and worker rights, I guess, ideas, labor rights ideas. Ideas like racial equity, open public policies and accountability, tenant protection issues, worker rights issues, and Medicare for all work towards goals that I think with the events of this past weekend, you know, if we're looking for ways to be inclusive and not combative, you know, the list that we're working on in San Jose, it's a good list of stuff. And I feel it can invite, you know, all peoples of the community to really good ideas. They're progressive, but yet, you know, it's in that good spirit that they just simply invite everyone to address the most important matters of our time. And that's an interesting combination that I think is what is going to be the future of our decade and how we define our decade. So good luck in these efforts, and hopefully everyone can be invited. Thank you.
All right, that'll conclude our public comment. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.